Yeah, that person wants to make Dillon Brooks the scapegoat. Dillon Brooks hurts them offensively. If you want to go in another direction, that's fine. There's other issues besides Dillon Brooks and him poking a bear.
I originally thought that we wouldn't need to make another video on this. I felt like everything that we needed to cover in regards to Dillon Brooks was covered in our original video on this topic about a week ago. But no, as with anything that involves Dillon Brooks, there's more and more drama surrounding the situation. Enough so that we had enough content to bring you guys an update, and believe me, this is a wild update. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Can I be honest for a second? The one thing that changed sports for me forever is Prize Picks. Just having a little extra action on the game has made watching games so much more enjoyable, and I've actually been using this to get into other sports as well. A lot of you have DM'd me the amount of money that you guys are making off of Prize Picks, and I post my picks onto my Instagram story every single day. And right now, if you use my promo code microphone, they'll match your first deposit up to $100. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Dillon Brooks has given us by far one of the greatest exits from an NBA team that I think we've ever seen. I mean, before the Lakers faced off against the Memphis Grizzlies, Dillon Brooks had this to say.
I wouldn't mind playing LeBron in a 7-game series. The legacy's there. First time back in the playoffs, knock them out right away in the first round. They'll test us good, you know. They got good pieces, good players, and that'll be a good first-round matchup for us.
To be honest, I felt like that was kind of respectful. I mean, what better way to show that your young, up-and-coming team that has won the number 2 seed in the NBA has officially arrived than by defeating the player that dominated the 2010s and arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. But this series got a little disrespectful. I mean, immediately, Dillon Brooks said this about LeBron James.
I don't care, he's old. You know, I poke bears. I don't respect no one until they come and give me 40.
And then following that, Dillon Brooks would punch LeBron James in the nuts in game 3, which would get him ejected. And then in the very next game, Dillon Brooks would miss multiple crucial defensive assignments, one at the end of the 4th quarter and one in overtime that would be instrumental to the Los Angeles Lakers winning. It got even more embarrassing. The Lakers would leave Dillon Brooks wide open during their series with him, and they would have that extra defender focus on John Morant or Desmond Bane on the perimeter. Dillon Brooks would shoot 31.2% from the field and 23.8% from 3 and average 10.5 points per game and shoot nearly 13 shots a game. So ever since he taunted LeBron James, he quietly had one of the worst possible series that you could ever have. Now, there was some speculation suggesting that this was the reason why the Memphis Grizzlies told Dillon Brooks point blank that he will not be brought back, which we've never seen before in NBA history. I mean, you never see a team go up to a player and say,
"Hey, no matter what happens, we're never bringing you back to this team."
Never. I don't think I've ever seen it in NBA history. Usually, there's a quiet, mutual parting of ways, or just a player goes and signs with another team. A good example of this is, I don't know, the Dallas Mavericks and Jalen Brunson last season. Yeah, they had a remarkable season. They made it to the Western Conference Finals. And then following that series, it was widely assumed that Jalen Brunson was going to sign with the New York Knicks, primarily because his father is an assistant on the New York Knicks, and the Dallas Mavericks appeared to be Luka Doncic's team, and Jalen Brunson may have thought that that was holding him back to a certain extent, and it looked like he was kind of right, by the way. But you didn't see the Mavericks go up to Jalen Brunson and say,
"We're not bringing you back no matter what."
Or you didn't see Jalen Brunson going up to the Mavericks and saying,
"I am not coming back no matter what."
No, rather, there was a fairly sketchy situation going on with tampering, and Mark Cuban will even tell you that. But eventually, Jalen Brunson would sign with the New York Knicks. Now, at this point, you're caught up with everything. Honestly, the fallout of this situation is hysterical because the general manager of the Memphis Grizzlies clearly threw some shade at the team this past year.
I mean, as I said, like there were definitely, some self-created distractions, in the series and along the way. We're going to take a different approach, as it pertains to that next season. I think you'll see a different approach from this team, but at the same time, confidence is important. there's nothing wrong with, some level of trash talking. We want a group that goes out there and competes and, is in that together. And that's part of the NBA, at some level. But there's a line, there's a line there, certainly. And I don't think that's lost on anyone here.
Now, if you pay attention, this doesn't fully tell you that the general manager is done with Dillon Brooks. He just made it seem like, hey, we could talk trash and that's the identity we want to cultivate, but there's a limit, and at a specific point, it becomes a distraction. Ja Morant held himself accountable, to his credit, which is why he's not getting as much about this situation as he was a few months ago. He held himself accountable. He's a young man. At a specific point, you got to learn. And he looks like he is learning from this experience, because I think that the Memphis Grizzlies could have won a championship with this team. But just because Ja Morant says that he wants to be a little bit more mature and hold himself accountable doesn't mean that he's not trolling Dillon Brooks for the situation that he's currently in. Ja Morant posted this a few days ago onto his Instagram story, which is hysterical, by the way. Now, if you're a Memphis Grizzlies fan at this point, you're familiar with one of Ja Morant's lines that is heavily influenced by, well, Youngboy NBA's music. And for those of you guys that don't know, the line is this.
It's a parade inside my city, yeah. It's a parade inside my city, yeah. Lord. It's a parade inside my city, yeah. Parade inside my city, yeah.
Which is obviously alluding to the fact that the Memphis Grizzlies are coming up and they're eventually going to have a parade as a result of winning a championship. And as a result, obviously, there's a lot of Ja Morant clips on the internet with that song in the background, and it's become a part of the Ja Morant brand. Very shortly after the Dillon Brooks news came out, obviously the top joke about Dillon Brooks is the fact that he's probably going to sign with the Shanghai Sharks or sign with China as a result of him probably getting washed out of the NBA. Ja Morant would post "It's a parade inside my city" on Google Translate, have it translated to Chinese, screenshot it, and post it onto his story. I wonder what this is alluding to. This doesn't mean that Ja Morant and Dillon Brooks have some sort of beef. I don't necessarily know. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors unless if you happen to be a member of the Golden State Warriors tech team and you decide to leak footage of Draymond Green punching the living crap out of Jordan Poole. I don't necessarily know the nature of Dillon Brooks' relationship with Ja Morant, but we could talk about how Desmond Bane feels about Dillon Brooks, because this is what he had to say about the Dillon Brooks situation shortly after.
First and foremost, we all got a bunch of love for Dillon. He's one of the first guys in, last guys to leave. I don't think it's hard to see what type of competitor he is and what type of effort he lays out on the line every night. Things like this, happen. It's just part of the business. There ain't no telling whether he's going to be back with us or with another team in the future. But, regardless, whatever happens, I wish him the best.
Now, this is where things get bizarre. First of all, there's this clip of a basketball team from China trying to recruit Dillon Brooks. So at this point, I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with Dillon Brooks' entrance dance, where he will do like a little point to the left, a point to the right, and he'll use that to kind of hype up his team as he's going into the arena. We've seen it multiple times. If you haven't, here it is. Well, you literally have this Chinese basketball team doing the same thing, which I guess is trying to recruit Dillon Brooks to China. But this is where things get really weird. Most of this stuff has been parody of Dillon Brooks going to China. A lot of it has been his teammates' reaction to the situation, but it gets a little toxic at this point as well. Dillon Brooks' agent did something that kind of violates the agent code. Now, I understand why you might see this in a different way, so allow me to explain myself real quick. As you guys know, Shams Charania posted this article about the Grizzlies informing Dillon Brooks that he will not be brought back about a week ago. JJ Redick called out Shams Charania for tweeting this, by the way. Take a look.
Agenda-driven media. I have a problem with it. It's the scapegoat. The reality is the Grizzlies have other problems besides Dillon Brooks. I'd be willing to bet that language didn't come from the Grizzlies. To me, he's not the scapegoat. And whoever agenda it was to tweet that out, I got a problem with that. Another direction. I don't understand why you have to kick a guy while he's down. For engagement? Really?
And to be honest, I usually agree with JJ Redick on these types of things, but I think he's kind of neglecting to acknowledge the fact that this is Shams' job. Usually he gets this information from sources such as agents, such as teams, and he tweets it out once it's fact. He doesn't tweet out speculation. Obviously, he's going to be hunting for this type of news, but there's a reason he's Shams, and there's a reason we trust him so much. Because this man rarely ever misses. I mean, he was spoiling NFL draft picks, for crying out loud. He was the guy that tweeted that Donald Trump had COVID a few years ago. Sometimes he just does it for fun just to mess with us. And this is where things get a little strange. Dillon Brooks' agent calls out Shams for this report, saying, "At Shams Charania, the leader of spreading false news and attacking players. Why any player in the league talks to this guy blows my mind." This to me just indicates inexperience as an agent. As soon as I saw this, a part of me was like, who the hell's Mike George, his agent? And who the hell does he represent? And when I look at this list, it's a pretty interesting list of players. Mike George is an agent for One Legacy Sports Management. Here are the list of players that he currently represents. I can't list all of them, so here's a screenshot if you guys want to look at all of them. But the highlights of this list are Justin Jackson, Anthony Bennett, Jamal Murray probably being the most prominent name on this list, Shaden Sharp probably being the newest, most prominent client on this list, Kenny Lofton Jr., Justin Jackson, Dillon Brooks, Jonathan Simmons, which I still had no idea he was trying to get into the NBA, Thon and Makur Maker, and at this point, I'm sure you guys get the gist. I don't think Shams did anything wrong here because I think the information is factual. And following this, you could just see that they tried to create a lot of press to save Dillon Brooks' name, which is just making it look worse, if you ask me. Because you know what they're claiming the excuses now for Dillon Brooks not returning to the Memphis Grizzlies at all whatsoever? He apparently wanted way too much money. Yes, this is what they're claiming. According to Ramona Shelburne, the reason why Dillon Brooks and the Memphis Grizzlies are parting ways this prematurely is because he wants $25 million a year from the Memphis Grizzlies, which is so comical because guess who makes about $25 million a year annually at this stage of his career? Draymond Green. Yeah, you can't make this up. Dillon Brooks is quite literally trying to emphasize the fact that he is Draymond Green. The thing is, if the Memphis Grizzlies were winning championships and Dillon Brooks was pulling this stuff, then that's one thing. It would be irritating, yes, but then you could make an argument that he is the Draymond Green of the Memphis Grizzlies. It's a little pathetic when your player is doing this and, well, your team isn't performing as well. To be honest, he does have a very reasonable argument in terms of per game averages in 2021 to 2022. He had a solid year. The problem is he regressed mightily this past year. 2021 to 2022 was his best season when he averaged 18 points per game off of 31% shooting from three, which by the way, we're going based off of per game averages, the most basic stat of all time. If we wanted to go look at his advanced analytics, that was his best value over replacement player of his career, 0.0 last year, which means you could easily find an upgrade for Dillon Brooks for the amount of minutes that you put him out for. His PER looked good, but I'm not necessarily a PER guy, and this is again from 2021 to 2022. This is me trying to make an argument for retaining Dillon Brooks. He contributed 1.6 win shares in 2021 to 2022 as well. This past year, he took a huge step back. He had the third lowest box plus minus of his career since his rookie season. He had the second lowest value over replacement player of his career, and he had the second lowest offensive box plus minus of his career. He contributed negative wins on the offensive end. This isn't necessarily a player that you have to cut immediately, but this is also a player that you don't pay $25 million a year for, especially if he's as big of a distraction as he was, especially when he embarrassed your franchise the way he did. At the end of the day, this Draymond Green clip really aged beautifully.
If you ever wondered why the Memphis Grizzlies is not ready to compete for a championship, look no further than this idiot right here. They're actually depending on this guy to help them win a championship. And he says his game is cool. Quite frankly, that just shows how little you know about basketball. And yet you running around talking about a dynasty? The dynasty starts after you, not with you.
Because the future of Dillon Brooks is definitely uncertain. You're going to see a lot of articles about teams that might be interested in his services, but at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to be a day one free agent. I think he's going to be a free agent that gets signed maybe a week later because he really damaged his reputation, he damaged his value, and the team who he was trying to be the Draymond Green for, who he was trying to carve out an identity for, no longer wants him. This is going to be a very humbling experience for Dillon Brooks. What could I say? Life comes at you fast. If you made it to the end of the video, comment ni hao in the comment section. And aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.